hopefully, I don't know.
Yeah, I was about to say the clock's running a little behind the clock. That's the weird part. Because on the right,
Okay.
from the thing, there's 2/3. I'm like,
All right. So from here on out, Dr. McQueenie. Well, don't beep at me. Dr. McQueenie will take over. Have fun. Thank you guys for being here.
Let's keep it like another minute or two, just go ahead and read the important log on.
Sure.
I was gonna, stop, and just let me know, so there was a question, and I don't know where Jared, thank you, Dr.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, and that's fine. So I'm just gonna ask you questions about, like your current job, about education, about what you did as an undergrad. What are the steps that you took to get your current position? Questions about what you wish you had known when you were in school, or things that you would recommend that people do that would make it better at that particular job. So I'll give it another minute or so and maybe get started.
Yeah, me too. I have a red, but it's not cold. A red will sound so good. Oh, never put it in my gun. Got hers. Cool.
it was that kind of stuff. It was called, sorry. But look, the month of April is supposed to be 89 degrees outside. That's all it's usually say. If you hit May, it's summer. If it's surprised or not, then it's like, oh Lord, it's no pickup day.
All right, y'all. If you're all ready, we will get started. Now I feel like intros. Okay, so for those of you joining via Zoom and or in person, what I'm going to have each of the panelists do is I'm going to ask them just a series of questions. Questions about what they are currently doing, questions about what they did as an undergrad, questions about what they did post-graduation in order to get their current positions, and then maybe any advice that they could give to anyone who's interested. I'll also open it up at the end for any questions from any of the people here or questions via Zoom. I will try to man that and address that. Okay, so I don't know what the easiest way to do this is. If you all just wanted to introduce yourselves and just say just something briefly about what you, like when you graduated and what you're currently doing, and then I can ask you all a series of questions after that. Sound good? Who would like to start?
I can start.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Ryan. I am currently a graduate student at LSU for a master's in library and information science. I graduated from Nicholls in spring 2021. And that's kind of like a very brief overview of me. Oh, I use they them pronouns. Should include them.
Hi, my name is Lizzie Bychurch. I am a graduate from Nicholls. I graduated in 2021. Currently, I am a full-time graduate student at the University of Louisiana at Monroe. I'm online and I'm getting my degree in history.
I am Nancy LeBeau. I graduated from Nicholls in May of 2022. And I am currently a very recent teacher at East Thibodeau Middle School.
I am Shay Cox. What degrees do you want?
I love your name.
Yeah, I graduated from East Central University in Ada, Oklahoma with my bachelor's. I have a master's in history from Oklahoma State University, and I have a PhD in history with a minor in public history from the University of Nevada at Las Vegas. I'm currently an assistant professor here.
I want to have you give it what year you graduated.
Or not, for my PhD, I graduated in 2020.
Thank you. Okay, cool. So I don't know what's easiest if I ask you all individually questions or if you prefer to ask me questions kind of writ large. But maybe I'll just go down and have you all talk about kind of your individual journeys to get into your particular positions. So if you don't mind starting, so some basic questions about what you studied when you were an undergraduate, if that changed over time, if you were originally planning on going into library science archives, and then what are the steps that you took to get to that position? And then I'll follow up with a series of questions. I want to give you 1,000 questions.
Okay. So to start off with, I think this is a system that a lot of people ended up following, which is you accidentally start as a STEM major and then realize I really don't want to do that. So I did start as a chemistry major. I was going to be a forensic chemist in particular, and then I saw how many biologies I would take, and I was like, nope, I really don't like this at all, actually. So I switched over to history. I ended up getting my dual degrees with history and political science with a minor in mass communication. Through that, I took 2 internship classes. The first one I interned at the Chauvin Sculpture Garden because it was close to my house, and I made their archive. I also worked a lot on their tours and started the process of I was hoping to lead toward having a recording of their process, both in French and in English. However, the person in charge of it didn't really want to go for all of that work, which was really sad. The second internship I had was actually at the archive on campus. And it was thanks to that I ended up going for my library science degree. I graduated, and before doing that, the archivist here looked at me in the eyes and said, okay, well, if you're going to be an archivist, if you like doing what this is, then you need to get a library science degree with a certificate in archives, which I didn't originally know existed. Which is one of the things I wanted everyone to know about if they don't already know that, if they hope to work in an archive. However, after I graduated and went for my degree, I realized how much a library science degree can do for you and how many doors it opens. And I was like, okay, well, let me see what the other doors look like, because it's really hard to get an archive degree, especially when you're getting your degree as you're doing it and getting a job doing that. So I started working at the public library that was near me when I moved. And since then, I discovered that I really do have a very strong love of public libraries, and particularly the outreach programs within public libraries. So that's hopefully where I'm going to go with my degree after that.
That's great. Can you say what kind of work that you typically are doing with your job now?
Yes.
And maybe what kind of work that you expect to be doing into the future?
I'm currently a library associate, which means that I do a lot of reference work. I sit at a desk for a variety of time and answer any questions that patrons might have about finding books in our collection, about online resources, general IT prep, which was interesting, but I didn't expect to do, but I do a lot now. Hopefully though, I will lean more further into the outreach aspect. So my goal is to be an outreach librarian, which means that I would be working on helping the resources outside of the brick and mortar of libraries to become more flushed and involved in the community. So that's for Lafayette Parish. The bookmobile is a bus full of books that go around to a variety of places. The bibliobike, which is a bike that also carries books around the near neighborhoods in case somebody can't get out to the library, the brick and mortar option, they can still use our resources as much as possible. That's story time in the park, stuff like that. Any outreach to help the library get acknowledged and help underserved communities get their resources is what I hope to work with.
Great. Can I ask too, you had said that there are a lot of opportunities that a library science degree can open up to you.
Yes.
What kind of careers would getting your library science help prepare you for?
Okay, so the library science, I go to LSU. I don't know if I highly recommend that, but I do want to point out that I'm referring to what LSU's certification process is, and I don't want to explain it for other colleges because they might have different options. For LSU, at least, there is an archive certificate, which is how you become a full-time archivist, or how to become a head archivist. They teach you proper maintenance of digital and physical varieties of maintaining, protecting, preserving, that kind of thing, as well as creating the system of archive itself. There is the public librarian sphere, which is what I'm doing. That teaches you about adult and youth services, how to create AV for that, creating book talks, which is showing off books that are coming up, that kind of thing. And then there's academic librarianship, which can be on the college or education, or lower levels. where you're going to be working with students directly, and the academic option is usually what people end up taking more frequently when they come from a history background, because they want to work in a library on a campus, which will need academic librarianship and probably a degree in whatever field you're going for, which is why with LSU you can dual degree and graduate both a master's in history and a master's in library and information science, which makes you more high level. But I just want to do public librarianship. But I did do research on all of the options because I wasn't sure where I was going at first.
Okay, I'll ask one last question and I'll turn this off. So sorry for putting it all on you for now.
I'm working out. This is exactly what
Okay, perfect. Are there things that you did as an undergraduate that you would recommend to other students, you know, whether it be volunteer things or internships or things that you did, or things that you wish you had done that you felt like would have better served you in order to figure out what you wanted to do, or to, you know, be further along in your career, you know, the things that you recommend?
I think that I was pretty good about doing internships. I took multiple of the public history courses that pushed us to go out to our communities, find an internship to work with, which I think is something that every history major should take. Even if you don't plan to work in public history, or even if you're not sure what you want to do with your degree, taking a public history class and being forced to interact in a more like offensive way, instead of just waiting for like priorities to come to you, was something that I am very thankful that I had, because it made it very easy when I had to go job hunting for the first time. However, I do wish that I would have shadowed more. Volunteering at your public library, I think that might be an option for you, but also like going to museums and seeing if they need extra hours, just seeing where your hands can be useful. Because the hardest lesson that I had to learn was that experience often means more than anything else. Like even if everything else is the exact same, if that person has more experience than you do, you're not going to pick. So I was extremely lucky to be hired at the library that I work with now, and definitely more excited about getting my degree, because I know for a fact that I've put in the hours and I have the background now, that if I become a librarian, I have proof that I know how to do it. Also, I wish that I had previously known a little bit more about understanding that failure doesn't mean a stopping point. And that sometimes the thing that feels like your current best option might not be your only option you could take. Yeah.
That's great advice. Thank you so much for sharing that. All right, Lizzie, I'm gonna ask you the same series of questions.
Okay.
We'll start with the beginning. So, can you tell us what you studied as an undergraduate? Were you originally planning on studying history? Did you kind of come to it by chance?
Okay, so first off, whenever I first came here to Nicholls, I was actually a computer science major. I went through like the basic business classes, and then once I got through like end of my first real year here at Nicholls, I realized, okay, business is not for me. Then I started taking some history classes, and I realized like I had a love for history in high school, so I just expanded on it here. I then attempted to stick with my business degree, but get a history undergrad, but that didn't end up working out. So I was like, okay, I love history. I love hearing people talk about it, and I also love like telling people about it. So then I eventually went to the College of Education in Behavioral Sciences. And then I finally got I went through, got my education degree, but at the same time, I was getting my dual history degree. So I doubled. And then I picked up a minor in political science and international studies while I was here too. And it was just something that just came naturally to me. And I loved history, so I wanted to help kids understand it, and if they can have a love for history, then they'll understand the world a little bit better. And yeah, and now I'm studying at ULM with my history master's.
Great. Were there things that you did as an undergraduate student here that you think helped kind of prepare you for the steps afterwards? In particular, I know you've done stuff with the World War II Museum. If you could talk about your experiences with that, your internship, your work with them, like what led you to that?
So I was in actually my student teaching whenever I applied for my internship at the World War II Museum, and I applied in the education department. So having that education background really helped a lot, because I was able to work with kids. I helped make a program for them during the summer. I was able to make the curriculum for it, at least for that year. And then I was just able to interact with all these different patrons, and I was able to allow people to learn history, at least World War II history, because that's one of the most popular things, and it's especially like popular in New Orleans because the World War II museum is there. And it was just, I don't know, it just happened. That's the best thing I could say.
Sure. Did you feel like your background, particularly taking education classes and then combining it with history, do you think that like really kind of geared you towards doing that educational outreach component?
Oh,
for
absolutely. Absolutely. Because like, if you love working with kids, if you love like history, then actually like putting it to the test and like showing like kids either teaching or in a museum, wherever you are, it's gonna be rewarding. That's the main thing. Like, you're gonna see these kids whenever you're in a classroom and you see an idea click, it's like, oh, I finally made it. Like, it gives you like this warm feeling like, okay, I did something right.
Great. Let me ask you about your current experience now at ULM. What led you to that particular school, that particular program, and what do you hope to then do with that degree afterwards?
So I was teaching, like I did do teaching for a little bit, and I knew I did my part of my master's program here at Nicholls. Like, I worked with some of my professors and we figured it out, and I was supposed to go to UNM, but again, I took a job as a teacher. So I was like, okay, I need an online degree and something that would fit my schedule, and ULM was just that. And I've had a pretty good experience there, so it's a good program.
Great. And then what's next for you kind of post-graduation? Are you going to stick with education, or are you going to be using the master's in a different way?
I think I really want to help with education. Like, I want to stay in there and like try to ensure that kids know about history, because it's something that like we're seeing now, that's just like kids need to know about what's going on around them, and if there's a way for us to help them, yes, I want to continue on with education.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna also ask some questions to Nancy about education, and it's okay if I come back to you with some questions about education. But maybe one last question now for you, same thing that I previously asked. What do you think, there are things that really helped you as an undergrad that you recommend to students, or things that you wish you had done as an undergraduate that you recommend to students now?
So first thing is, like not Sam, oh my god. Oh my god. I know. Like Ryan said, go do internships. That is the main thing. Whether it's for history or whether it's in education, you need to get yourself out there, because the more you're exposed to whatever you're gonna go into, the more you're gonna be like, okay, do I love it or do I hate it? And then maybe whenever you're down the line, you're like, this is not for me. So you will know more ahead of time. And at Nicholls, having just professors be there for you, and like, if you need help actually asking for the help, that helped me a lot, because I knew I could go in and trust these people and they would help me understand whatever I needed to know.
Okay, that's great. One last follow-up question. How did you end up interning specifically with the World War II Museum? And when you were working with them, did you feel like you reached that if you had continued working with them with your current degree, that you would have reached some type of ceiling that you needed to have that master's degree, or was that kind of a separate decision?
No, so first thing is, I was strolling the website. I was strolling a World War II museum website because I've always wanted to work there. So I was just looking at it one day and I saw the internship. I suggest like that's something that if you know you're going to want to head into that field, you start looking at job opportunities now and seeing what you need to qualify, because that just makes you more valuable to them. And to get ahead in like a museum space, what you have to understand is you need to have that master's degree behind you. Regardless of what it is, 9 out of 10 is going to be history or some form of that. You have to have it behind you to at least get into a further position and just an internship.
Okay, Ryan, go ahead. You want to add that?
Sorry, to jump off of your point. So we're doing a forum sign real fast. When it comes to libraries, I think that it's really important. Some people will just look at the library website to see if there's a job available. That's not where you're going to find your jobs. Most of the time, libraries put their jobs on their city or parish website, where like their government has all of their things, because we have our city, like we have our government workers. So it's easier if you're going for that. Like the one in Lafayette, for example, updates every Friday at noon. So anything that's open in the city is going to be on that website. So we have a lot of people who come in asking us if there's a job or if they can work with us, and the answer is probably, but you have to go on a different website and apply through someone else. It's not through us. There's also the governmental jobs website. There are multiple websites, a lot of different resources that are entirely like state or federal, that library science in particular can be very useful for, and to also build off of needing that master's degree. For libraries, especially in bigger cities where they have enough people, librarians have the master's degree. You get, like, for example, right now, I am hard stopped at library associate. I could possibly be a library associate too, but I cannot become a librarian or get paid librarian status without getting the master's degree. And that only is different when it comes to smaller areas, because sometimes they just don't have the people to require a degree. However, in that case, usually they go on the same pay scale as, like, if you don't have a degree, you get paid at least $5 to $10 less.
Okay.
Going off of her thing, with the museums and all like that, you have to just look at the website or like look at governmental jobs, because it is part of the federal and state governments too. So you're just gonna have to look in different areas. Like Indeed might have some, ZipRecruiter, while state and federal government jobs, I think that's, or governmentaljobs.com might have something. You have to look at different areas. You can't just like, oh, I'm gonna focus in on this one website unless you know for sure that is the actual museum you want to work at, and then go troll the jobs.
Okay, that's great. That's great advice. And what I'll do too at the end is I'll put into the chat some different websites that you all can use. Governmentjobs.com is one of them. USAjobs.gov is your federal jobs. So there are a couple different job boards which I will post onto the chat, and I'll send to anybody who's participating and wants that. Just some different places that you can look for it. But I think that's great advice, especially looking in advance. What is that career need, education or experience, and then figuring out what you need to do in advance for that.
It was one of our assignments literally in my master's.
Okay.
Right? It's like they made us break down exactly what is necessary for a job that we might want to take.
Okay.
It was very useful and kind of eye-opening, but there is remember, if it doesn't say required, don't be afraid.
Okay.
There you go.
Great. I'll shift to you, Nancy, and then Lizzie, if you don't mind to answer some questions about education. But Nancy, can you tell us what led you to studying history at Nicholls? Can you tell us about like your journey towards that?
My very long journey towards that. So I have been a Nicholls student on and off for 16 years. I have been in 6 different majors. Most of which were education. I did take a small semester stint into accounting, which is weird. But I always came back to mostly education. When I switched to secondary social studies education after accounting, I got my degree audit, and it was going to take me a very long time to graduate with an education degree. It was going to take me between 3.5 and 4 more years on top of the 16 I'd already been there to graduate with that degree. So I decided, you know what, it's going to take me a year to graduate with a history degree. And I can always do alternative certification through multiple different programs. So I decided to do that. I went through, I got my history degree, and was going to move into alternative certification right after graduation, because you do need that bachelor's degree before you can even begin doing any kind of alternative certification. So I was going to do that, and then right before, I think it was 2-3 months before graduation, the Uvalde shooting happened, and I got terrified and said, no more, I'm not going to do that again. And so I applied for the administrative assistant position at Nicholls for the department, and that's what I did up until 2 days ago.
Okay. So can you tell us what brought you then back towards education? You know, what opportunities did you see that you could do that?
Well, as being the administrative coordinator for the history department, I got to watch all of my friends come in my office and make copies and then go and teach. And that made me really sad, because I wanted to do that, because I've always wanted to be a teacher. I've never actually really wanted to do anything else, even that little stint into accounting. I never really wanted to be an accountant. Because when I went into accounting, I was like, ooh, but I could teach accounting in high school. It always came back to teaching. So I just knew that getting a history degree was going to get me out of college faster.
Okay.
And there was a way that I could get a certification after that, no matter what.
Now, listen, you did complete the formal education degree through Nicholls.
Yes.
Can you say like pros or cons, maybe you two, Nancy, pros or cons of doing like the formal degree versus doing alternate certification?
I think a pro for me is that whenever you first start your education classes, you are asked to go into a classroom. Like you are asked to say, go into a elementary, middle, and high school. That's only if you're secondary. I think it is like, that's the standard though, an elementary, middle, and high school, and you spend more time wherever you want to actually like go. So you actually know, okay, if I don't like a classroom, you'll know in the first instance. Because that is one thing that you have to understand. You do not love teaching. You do not have the passion to actually teach and actually like help the students, help the children, then you will not be happy yourself. That is something that I think everyone needs to understand. And that's a pro because you're able to actually go into a classroom and see other teachers and shadow them and look. A con would be that it would take 3-4 years, and you kind of do have to know right whenever you get into Nicholls, because you have that first year of just gen ed courses. But after that, you have to get into those education classes.
Yeah.
And then a con would also be the test. If you don't, I don't know if they still require the tests.
Not the Praxis 1, you are still required to take Praxis 2 and 3, no matter if you go through Nicholls or you alt cert, you have to take Praxis 2, and actually you shouldn't even be applying for jobs before you take Praxis 2.
So I had to take Praxis 1 because my ACT score didn't like let me out of it. And that cost me a little bit of money just because it was expensive. But after that, then there are like, I think, opportunities where people can get like coupons or like,
I wouldn't even know where to begin to find those.
I don't know where it would be at. That would probably be something that you'd have to talk to either your education advisor or someone else better in the field about that one. And the tests are expensive. That's the thing. The tests are really expensive, and you only get one try for like every 60-70 days.
Yeah,
Can you just briefly explain like what is Praxis 1, Praxis 2, Praxis 3, what those are?
so Praxis 1 is pretty much the ACT. It's general knowledge. I know for alternative certification, you no longer have to take that.
I don't know.
After a certain date, I think it was sometime in 2022, you no longer had to take Praxis 1 for the state of Louisiana. I know, right? I had to take it. Yeah, almost 185.
Wow.
I'd
Okay.
say 3 times. That's why I wanted to.
Okay. But you
Sorry.
could, but prior to this, you could also, potentially if you get a high enough test score, you can test.
Yeah,
for that.
if you get it at 22 on your ACT, then you're out of it. Like you don't have to
Yeah.
take it. Praxis 2, it depends on like where you're going in your field. If you want to go the history route, then you have to take secondary, social studies, education. If you are going math, you have to do the math one.
It's your content knowledge
yes.
is what it's called.
Thank you. I'm trying to think of the word.
So whatever subject you are teaching, you need to take that content knowledge. But you're not restricted to one content knowledge. If you take one and say you get a job, say you take the history one, you get a job as a secondary social studies teacher. Then if you want to say, hey, oh, you know what, I love history, but these kids are nuts and I don't want to deal with it. You can then go and say, take K through 5 ELA and be a elementary reading teacher. You can take special ed, you can take Spanish, you can take anything that has a test, you can take it. You can take as many practice as you want and have as many content knowledges as you want. And it just makes you more hireable the more content knowledge you have, because those schools do look at that.
Also, you have to take the Praxis PLT, which is your like just your average like classroom management. You're gonna have some theories in there from some psychologists, one of those.
Yeah.
And that is also a separate test. You have to pass both though. In order to actually student teach or do residency here at Nicholls, you must pass both before you actually enter into a classroom your senior year. So unless you do not have those, you are not going into a classroom your senior year.
So alternative certification is a little different.
Yeah.
So with alternative certification, in my case, I have not taken Praxis 2 yet, but I am working as a non-certified teacher. Some parishes will hire non-certifieds, others won't. I live in St. James, they will not hire non-certifieds, but LaFouche will. I really do think it has something to do with the fact that St. James pays a whole lot more than LaFouche, so more teachers are going to those places, so they don't have to hire. It's not official. But for all alternative certification, you can start working. Even if your school will hire you before taking a Praxis 2, and you do not have to take the PLT until you are done with your online courses.
Mine's, I just had to do everything beforehand, before I actually got into the classroom. I think that's just the difference between it, like, you have to take it up front, and then at the end of I did student teaching, so at the end of my 3-4 month stint, we came here, did the paperwork, and then now I am a board certified teacher of the state of Louisiana. So I have a 5-year teaching license, so I'm able to actually go into a classroom for the next 5 years because I'm certified to do it.
Right. With alternative licensing, you once you take your Praxis 2 in the first 3 classes of the particular one that I'm doing, it was just I teach. You take your Praxis 2, your first 3 classes on I teach, you become what is called practically certified, meaning that you can you are paid as a full teacher, you are treated as a full teacher, but you do not have your license yet. You get 1 full school year to what is considered your student teaching. So you'll have a person who comes in 5 times during that school year to observe you and how you teach. And then at the end of that, you take your PLT, and once you are completed with that, you are fully licensed.
Can you tell me the jobs that you have currently, how did you find those particular jobs?
So I was a teacher and they just called me. I put my application into the LaFouche Parish school system. It was just sitting there and they had my name on a list because they knew I was a graduate of Nicholls. And most of the time, if you're in LaFouche Parish, they're gonna hire a Nicholls graduate. And they just called me. I interviewed. That was it.
Okay.
Sorry. I happen to be slightly disgruntled with my current position or my last position. And I was just kind of poking around on the LaFouche Parish site and the St. James site, where I found that they do not hire non-certified. And I happened to come across East Thibodeau Elementary or East Thibodeau Middle was hiring for a 6th grade and 8th grade social studies teacher. So sorry. I just hit you in the head. Sorry. So no, there we go. So I just happened to see that East Thibodeau was hiring for a 6th and 8th grade teacher, and that they did hire non-certified. So I kind of just took the chance. I put in the application and they ended up giving me a call within a couple of days from the school board office. They told me I could contact the schools that they gave me a list of all of the positions that were available. And said that I was more than happy to contact the principals of those schools and, introduce myself, say my application is sitting there. And the principal at East Thibodeau said, come in for an interview within a couple of days. Now, during summer, that would be a little different. Like if you apply right after you graduate, they're going to place their current teachers first. then they're going to take people who are already certified and maybe just did not get asked back to their current school. They'll place those teachers. And then they're going to look at the people who are certified, who maybe like are coming in from a different state or just graduated Nicholls. Those people we place then, and then they're gonna look to fill those spots with non-certifieds or those who are currently in licensure.
It just all depends on your district, honestly. So like that's a Lafourche Parish is one, but we both don't know what St. James is or St.
Charles, St. Charles.
St. Mary and or Terrebonne.
Mhm.
So like that was just our experiences in the system.
Right,
It could be different.
right.
And it's gonna vary too by the state, you're right, it's
Yes.
gonna be different in different states, so.
Oh, what I do know is that if you get certified here, you move to another state, like say you go to Tennessee, you will have to go back and get certified in whatever area it is. You're gonna have to take like a state test or something to recertify yourself, just because your teaching license is specific to your state. So like I was teaching Louisiana history, knowing Louisiana history really wouldn't help if I moved to Tennessee.
Right.
So like it's varying.
And Ryan, for your degree, you don't have to do it state specific,
No.
right? Okay.
It is countrywide for all, like, and it's useful that is true, because pretty much, this is the hardest part of getting my degree, is that there's pretty much one college per state that has my degree program. So in Louisiana, it's LSU, once again, don't know if I recommend it. But I applied to multiple states outside of Parrish, and that's another thing I wish that I knew a little bit more about when I started applying for grad school, especially for my degree, is that some states don't waive your out-of-state tuition, even if they give you a grad assistantship. And that is one of the scariest parts of it, because I almost moved to Alabama when I would have been paying more for one semester than I would have been paying to pay for both semesters here. So even if you apply for a graduate assistantship or anything, any tuition, that kind of stuff, make sure you read the fine print. And if you are unsure of what it means, talk to a professor, call someone who has been through it before, because you need it explicitly to say that they waive state tuition. Because it is a nightmare of how expensive like state schools can be when it's not in state for you.
All right, Dr. Cox, let me ask you a couple questions. All right. What led you to studying history many years ago when you were an undergraduate? A few years ago when you were an undergraduate, what led you there?
So I started out as a business major. I thought I wanted to do marketing. Within one semester, I decided that was a horrible idea, and then I went to become studies major. And I was bored. So I think they call it NACO here. And so whenever I spent, I don't know, 2 semesters doing, 3 semesters doing that. I had just kept taking history classes, and I had a really wonderful history department at East Central, and they were my favorite. And so I decided I was gonna go ahead and switch. And I thought, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do with a history degree? I called my mom and she panicked, because she was like, you're never getting a job. What are you doing? But I decided I wanted to go to grad school. And whenever I first started grad school, public history really wasn't, it was a thing, but it was not a thing where I was. And so I didn't know anything about public history in my master's program. So I applied to a few schools for masters. I stayed all in-state tuition because I was terrified of how much money it was going to cost me, because most of the time you don't get paid to go to school for your masters. And since I paid for my undergrad, like 3 jobs by myself, it was a lot. So I spent a couple of years at Oklahoma State. I think it's a better program now. I wouldn't have recommended it if anyone came right after me. So it's something about choosing a grad school. If you want to go that route, go meet people and talk to those grad students. Because if they are upset or miserable, or they're scared of a certain professor, you wanna know those things. It's good to do your homework and investigate where you're gonna be spending the next few years of your life. So I got my master's and took some time off, because going through school straight through is really hard, and it's a lot. And so I took a year off and I missed it. I really, I always still, I stayed wanting to be a college professor. That was the one thing I knew from whenever I switched my degree the last time, whenever I was an undergrad. This is my thing. And so I, again, applied to where I was gonna be, because, you know, life decisions. So I applied in state. There was one school. I went and I met the advisor that I wanted. I met everyone I'd asked for on my committee, and it felt like home. So I met the grad students, and they were good and kind, and I thought, you know, I can do this, I can be here. And a piece of advice I would say is, if you're gonna get your PhD, only go where they're gonna pay you. You will get paid for your PhD. So that's a tuition waiver, that is a stipend. And so shop around whenever, if that is something you want to do, make sure that that's make sure you're gonna get money. Never get a PhD if you're not getting paid. It's not a good idea. And so I spent 5 years there. I don't know where we need to go with this, but.
Well, so let me ask you, what doors were opened up to you by getting the PhD versus just staying with the master's? And can I also ask you about your experience in public history world too, working for different public history organizations, how you were able to do that, what you enjoyed about it, what are the opportunities that you think are available in the public history world?
So by getting my PhD, I got a minor in public history. And whenever you go that route, your professors are going to have connections. They're going to be able to introduce you to someone from the National Park Service, if that's what you're interested in, someone from historic preservation. I've kind of been a jack of all trades whenever it's come to public history, because I have worked for the Park Service, I have worked for a museum, I have worked for Nevada's oldest historic preservation institution. And so I was doing all of that while getting my PhD, but you do, it's like Ryan and Lizzie have said, that you do internships. You volunteer your time for free. One of my really good friends who got a master's started out just volunteering for the Mob Museum in Las Vegas. And it was volunteer, I don't know, three days a week, few hours each time, and just try to get your foot in the door. And if they like you, they like your work, you demonstrate that you can be responsible and diligent, that's what opens the doors for you if you don't have a professor advocating for you or something like
that. Just another little tidbit of information. Even if it feels like it's not important to you, just them knowing your face can be the selling piece, like the feature. I moved to Lafayette Parish, never been there before in my life. The first thing I did when I wanted to possibly work at a public library was go get a library card. I moved there, I was like, first thing I'm doing, walking into the main branch library, met everyone, put my name down, got a library card, walked upstairs, said hello to all the workers, was as polite as possible, walked downstairs, left. The first interview I had, one of the person on my interview staff was the woman that signed me up for my library card. And I looked at her and said, oh, it's really good to see you again. You signed me up for my first library card here. And she went, oh, I do remember you. And then she hired me. So even like I had backing of like, I'm getting this degree, I am a good worker. I had great like backing of like professors here were my references, people who had known what I do. But it was also like, I was the person she remembered. And even if it's not like to fully volunteer, if you're working directly with them, just being known by a person makes you likely to get picked. If you're a stranger, they have no reason to remember your face or your name. But if they know even one like joke or tidbit about you, there's a higher chance of you being known.
Same thing in the museum space. Like whenever I was at the World War II Museum, if you apply to a job, like 9 out of 10, you've interacted with the people that are going to at least attempt to like interview the first round. So them just like, oh, I know you, like we've seen each other in passing, it helps. Just having a friendly face, just talking and smiling, it does work.
It's also the rules of follow-up, if you apply online or you're not moving in state, just being like, oh, hey, like I was glad to have had that interview, I hope to see you soon, I hope to work together. Just that little extra foot of like, hey, I remember that you here, you should remember me, like I know that you've interviewed like 10 people for this position or like 30 people in like bigger cases, but like, I'm the person that got back to you. I'm the person that said this when I entered. Reminding them of your name is a really good way of getting your foot in the door. And I also think that it's interesting the different things that our 2 degrees could do for us, like the public history background, because that was one thing that Sam, who couldn't be here today, because she's actually working on her big thesis, is that she had professors who have talked to her about my degree. Because there are like kids who went in for public history, but what they want is an archive degree. And that's not the same degree at all. So a lot of students who go for history degrees, the 2 big things that everyone knows that they want is academia and archives. But I feel like that is often the hardest thing for teachers, like they maybe don't think about it as intently, but that delineation really matters when it comes to what degree is written down by your name. So the difference of like me and, well, obviously you have so much more experience than me, so it's not the exact same, but like if you just wrote down our names with like our degree at the very end of it, we are both very different styles of like what we can do and what we know how to do. So like they might not want me directly at like museum preservation for like creating programs and that kind of stuff, but they might want me if I had an archival certificate over someone else. So just knowing the difference of what you exactly want to do can define what you can do after you've already signed up and gotten halfway through your degree and you've already paid for half of it. So I feel really bad for some of those UL students who wanted an archive certification now have to get that on top of their master's program.
So basically shop around, make sure that you know what you want.
And what your degree does for you.
Yeah.
And again, I think that speaks to if you want to take a look at a job in advance and see what are the educational requirements, because they're going to say you need to have this MILS versus you need a master's in history. Yes, they're going to specifically outline that, and certain jobs will specifically say you need to have that archive degree, otherwise you cannot get this job. And I agree. I did a public history program, and I knew a lot of friends who ran into that ceiling, where because they only had the public history master's, they could not advance in an archive world. Anything else in general that you recommend, and then I'll open it up to any of the people here or on Zoom if they want to ask any questions.
I just want to bring back up the point that we kind of started with, which is don't be afraid to fail. You will get rejections, both from grad school and jobs alike. You will get those rejection letters. It's mostly about the, okay, well, we'll figure it out from here. It's like, I did not get a library degree the first time. Like I didn't get the library job immediately after I graduated from here. I worked at Nicholls, the craft store, for 3 months while I was applying around to see what happens. I interviewed at UL to be a business assistant because my degree could point toward like accounting, but not quite. It's like working with different records and that kind of thing. My degree could have been useful for that. And I didn't get that job either. I got really close though, which was very fun because I had no idea what was going on with that. But you're not going to get it off the bat. The point of it is, even if you mess up or you fail or it doesn't work out for you the first time, you figure it out and you will go for the next one, or you'll figure out that maybe I'm not made for that. And that's also a learning position. Just because you graduate college doesn't mean that adult life suddenly makes all the sense that you go for.
My suggestion is if you want to go into teaching, you need to get into that classroom as soon as possible. Because if you do not, and you get there and like your first day, you could be stumped. And it's just you in the classroom alone with the children because you're the adult. You have to know that this is what you want to do. Because if you don't, again, you will be sad, you will struggle. Even though you know all these people are behind you and like you have the knowledge, you need to be confident in yourself.
What's the word?
Backpack.
Yeah, that one.
That was good.
Off of that. I would definitely get yourself into a classroom as soon as possible. And being in a classroom for the last couple of days, I will say I don't know that I necessarily recommend doing alternative certification. Because I am now going to run into a spot where I don't know how to make a test. I don't know how to make a study guide. I don't know how to, like, I know the material. I could teach the material all day long, but I don't know what to pick up for a grade. What to put on a test and how to make it. I don't know any of that stuff. Now, luckily there's quite a few good people around, and the lady who was, taking over the classes is gonna kind of, help me out for the, at least foreseeable future. For this year, but I'm gonna get to a point where I don't know what I'm doing. And being in, actually going through those education classes, I'm sure they taught you how to make a study guide, how to make a test, what to pull, how to do it.
Also, classroom management. That is one of the biggest things that a college professor has, an elementary school teacher has, middle school, high school, whatever, all in between. You have to know how to run your classroom, because if you do not know how to run your classroom, no one does. So it's just something that you have to understand. So you have to get into a classroom, regardless of your degree, regardless of if you even think about wanting to teach, you need to go there first to see. And like having mentors, understanding, and like having all these other people around you will help you, but it's up to you.
Yeah, that kind of brings us back to like when you get into history, sometimes people act like it's an isolated degree. Like you will end up in a research position where you are completely isolated and you won't be working with it. No, you will very quickly learn that any possible route forward when it comes to a history degree is that history is a community. You have to learn how to work with the people around you. You will have mentors, you will eventually have mentees. You will be someone that has to interact with people on your same level, above you, below you, people that don't know history whatsoever, don't understand what you're doing. As a librarian, that was one of the fastest learning curves. Is like, oh, okay, well, I can't do this by myself. I don't know how to make a program. I don't know how to do this. And you very quickly learn that your degree is not isolated. You have to trust the people that are around you, and you have to learn to be trusted. And that's also something I didn't really think about when I started getting my degree.
Also, go meet your professors, like go talk to your professors, even in your undergrad. Having them know your face, having them see your face, and having a conversation with them. Later on, if you are going to get into grad school, some of the grad schools require them to write a recommendation letter.
Or if you're getting a job and you haven't had a good job on it.
Anything. Having those professors know you and see you and like actually have a conversation with you, that's important. It's really important.
Absolutely. Even if you are doing alternative certification, if you're not like, with Lizzie where they send out a list and she just got a phone call, I had to apply to fill out an application. I've been a stay-at-home mother and a student for, how old are you? That's not a good question. For at least 6 or 7 years. So I haven't had like a real job for longer than a couple of months in a really long time. So I had to have those really good recommendations that would say this person's not going to just flake out. However, I mean, at the school I'm at, they are very excited to see me come back every day. And apparently that doesn't happen often.
Oh, yeah.
Let me open it up to people here and then people on Zoom. If you all have any questions to ask our panelists, please feel free.
I have a question. So I graduated from here a year and some change ago. I really want to get my master's, but I've always been an extremely poor writer, and I'm getting a master's is very writing headed. Yeah. What are some of your suggestions?
Make friends at the writing center.
Yeah.
God, make friends at the writing center. Also talking to your professors. If you're not a strong writer, but you feel like you can talk through some stuff pretty well, some people, like some professors will let you have a conversation in place. Not a lot of them, but some of them are open to that option.
Having friends in the same program as you.
Having friends.
Or maybe a friend in, having a couple of friends in English who may be good at grammar, or, you saying, these are my points, or I wrote this, can you maybe tell me how to rearrange it so it sounds good?
I live with 2 other master's students. The trio, we will pass off our papers to other people in our house for them to write abstracts for us, where we're just like, I don't know how to make a point. But it's also like, Grammarly, premium Grammarly hits.
$75, like, for, like, if you catch it on sale, $75 for a whole entire year. Best thing of your life, because it will help you.
But if you're like me and I don't wanna pay the $75, even the base one
Helps.
will save you. Because a teacher will look at you and be like, you don't know how to use preposition phrases, and I'd be like, you're right, I don't. And then Grammarly knows how to do that, and will help you. I recommend, love that place.
I had a sister, so she edits all of my papers.
My sister can't read.
Her bandwagon is my bandwagon.
Yeah, Lizzie's on the bandwagon.
I'm on there.
It's just a lot, actually.
And I'd recommend to trying to get or ask professors to see something that is a good writing sample, because sometimes it's hard to imagine what that looks like unless you have a concrete example of that. So if you can see really good writing examples, you can use something as a model to kind of model that after. I think that can be really helpful for that.
You can also ask professors if you can turn something in early as like a test round.
Yeah.
If they don't let you turn something, if they don't let you do the other option where you can just talk through it, sometimes they will let you turn in your paper like a week early. And then they will send it back and be like, no, you kind of missed it with this, you changed like this paragraph, it would sound a little bit better, especially if you're going for history, the whole point is a thesis.
Yeah.
Is like, they want you to write that big paper that makes sense, and you're going to have to go to a committee, they're going to have to read your paper, you're going to have a person that matters to you, whatever.
And you will have to defend it.
So they want you to be a good writer, they don't want you to flounder. So they will help you, even if that means turning it early, fixing it, turning it in better for a different grade, understanding what they want from you, the writing styles, that kind of stuff.
And even the samples, like even with different professors, like where one thing may sound great to him, it may be absolute crap to her. So you may have professors who what they're looking for is completely different from, say, your professor in another class. So getting a writing sample that they think is good from each professor is probably a good idea. So you know kind of what style is what. I know even in undergrad, there were papers I wrote for Dr. Wilson that I would never write for Dr. Cox ever.
Also, it just depends on your degree, because let's say you're going, what master's program are you looking at?
I'm looking at classic and ancient.
Okay.
Yeah,
So like you are probably, what is it?
No, it's gonna be
That's
Chicago.
Chicago. So like, once you,
library science AP, they're.
yeah, you might need to know 2 different types of writing styles. So like she writes in APA, but I write in Chicago. You just got.
I believe some of my teachers in letting me write in Chicago though.
Chicago's the worst.
I love Chicago.
Chicago rules.
Chicago is just
Don't listen to
detailed.
Nancy.
I love.
It's really detailed. So you're just gonna have to know different writing styles.
Oh, and don't be afraid to get,
That's why it's on my notes.
she's gonna get humbled.
Very quickly.
When you're in grad school, there's gonna be one time that you're gonna turn something in that you thought was good, and then they're gonna give you a bad grade. And you're going,
That's definition like this.
it's going to shock you.
It's gonna drop kick you and you're gonna be like,
No,
oh God.
graduated with a pretty great GPA, not to brag, this is just a genuine fact of my life. The second thing that happened to me, as soon as I got into grad school, a teacher looked at me in the eye, said, you missed the entire point of this assignment, gave me a flat D. I had never received a D in my life. They gave me a flat D, didn't explain anything. She sent me the link to the writing center. That's how bad it was. And simply, she looked at me and she said, try again. And I went, okay, don't drop out, don't drop out, don't drop out. And then I turned it in again and I got an A on it. So I just want to point out that you're gonna get humbled at least once, but you're going to be able to get through it.
And hopefully your grad school professors will be kind and decent.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're
But-
hoping for kindness.
Right.
Kindness.
I didn't stop her on a bad day. That's just how the situation works for her. So
Also, at least like even if you're in an online program like I am, or both of us are, actually emailing your professor, introducing yourself, saying, hey, my name is this, I'd love to have a conversation with you about your class so I can understand it better, works tremendously. Because one of the professors that I have, I'm currently taking this class right now, knows my name and knows my face because I've talked to him multiple times, going, hey, I need help with this paper that we're writing. He knows who I am, and he knows that I'm attempting to at least try, which is better than nothing.
Mark asked, how would you compare the workload, time commitment in graduate school to your experience in undergraduate?
I don't think I'm a good, maybe I am. I am full-time student, full-time worker. Which means that I have a 40-hour work week and I have 3 classes a semester at grad school. I had the habit, when I was an undergrad, I was extremely lucky where I didn't have to work as much. Like I had the internship and then I was hired, but I was very careful about my work and time for school. But in grad school, I don't have that option, because I have to work full time and I'm getting my degree for this job. So I'm going as much as I can with it. I feel a lot like I am drowning, when I'm having a bad day. But the fact that you have to learn is that you have to remember that you are still a person underneath all of that. And that you need to talk to your boss and figure out what you can do in a semester. There is a lot of options for taking less than full time, and there's a chance that you will probably have to drop under full time at least once if you want to have a good time management thing. I'm very lucky where my job and my work and my school kind of go hand in hand. So I'm capable of doing some work while I'm doing some schoolwork at work. So that makes it possible for me to take as many classes as I do in a semester without going fully insane. There is a very important thing for all students. It happens in undergrad, it happens now, and I think it continues to happen for professors, is you can kind of get stuck in that spiral of, well, I can't stop because this due date is now and has to be done. And especially in academia where you might have to publish a specific amount of time, it's like you start going into that spiral of like, well, if I don't do it now, then I won't have time and then I can't do this. But remembering that you are you and you are a person who has the ability to breathe is the best thing I can request for all students to remember, and our teachers if they're also in that spiral, is that your time is your own and sometimes you can ask for an extension. I have had really bad mental health weeks where I had to look at a teacher, I had to send mass emails to 3 teachers and be like, hey, there are 6 things due this week, and I can't get myself to do any of it right now. I'm trying to get it done, but I can't. And so far, every time I've ever had that, even with that terrifying teacher who gave me that D and was not kind about it, if you look at a teacher and very loud say, I am overwhelmed and I will get this to you as soon as I can, but I need an extension, they will at least give you like 3 or 4 days. And that is sometimes the breath of fresh air you need to make it through for the next week. So don't be afraid to ask for help from coworkers, your teachers, or peers, just to help you get through the week. Because we're all kind of going through it.
So I was a full-time teacher and I was a part-time grad student. I took 6 hours and I was drowning, like she said. It is a lot of work and you just have to come up with a work-life balance. That was really my first real kick of like, okay, having a full-time job while being in grad school, because whenever I was here at Nicholls with my master's program, I was only a part-time intern at the World War II Museum. So I did have it created that own work-life balance. But you have to prioritize, sometimes you have to make a list. And like she said, asking your professors, going up to them or emailing them, hey, I wasn't feeling, I said I wasn't feeling good that week because I was on a spiral too. And he gave me an extra week on my thing. And that was what what was needed to ensure that I got my work done. It is a learning curve. You have to give yourself some grace. That is something that you have to learn, I think, in all of your professions, whatever you end up doing, you have to give yourself grace.
I just kind of learn how you remember things. Like I wish that I learned quicker how to make a spreadsheet, because how I remember everything is that I have a spreadsheet that literally counts down how many days until an item is due, and it's organized by color and type of assignment. I can show you. And if I knew how to do that from the very beginning, I feel like I would have been at least 20% less stressed out the entire time, because I learned how to do that last semester and now it is perfect. And I had literally given it to other students that work with me still, because I'm like, here, we're all online. I'm stressed, you're stressed. Here's a spreadsheet, and you don't have to make it pretty. I already made it big pretty. So learning how you remember things and learning what works for you is possibly the best thing that I can think of for any student. Is like, if you are the sticky note on the laptop kind of person, you do that. That works for you. Don't try to be a cute planner girly if you're not a cute planner girly. It's not going to work for you. You're just going to buy a lot of stuff and it's not going to work. Sometimes you're a hardcore Excel spreadsheet girl, and that's what you got to go with.
And sometimes you just sticky note on the laptop, girl.
I see a very
That is a
long
long
list
question.
here. Oh, wow.
Okay.
Me trying to figure
Oh,
out.
no, it's-
Melissa says, what should I be doing now with senior year approaching in the fall to better prepare for finding a grad school program and beginning to establish a career? I've not begun to look for programs and don't know where to start. I'll be looking to do an online grad program due to having to work full time, owning my own business, doing an internship, and while also raising my kids who are extremely active in multiple sports. Just referencing, I'm majoring in history, getting certified in public history, and minoring in English literature.
Then you might, okay. First step,
Take a deep breath.
Yes.
breathe.
Second step, prioritize kind of what you are wanting.
From what you have said just now, you have a lot on your plate already, which means that I probably would recommend you taking a full time. But if you can do it, you can do it, follow your dreams. Second is look at your budget, look at what loans you apply for. Since you have children, you might apply for a surprising amount of loans that you might not have thought already. And then what I did, once again, remember that I use a spreadsheet to remember how things are due. I made a list of every school in the state. Theoretically, for my master's program, it was really easy. There was one, and then I looked at other states and I found the other ones. But when you're dealing with history, there's a lot of options, which means that you can shop around. I recommend making a list, writing down what you think is cute. Look on forums because students will talk. And especially with online students, you have to make sure that your teachers are willing to communicate well. That's one of my biggest hangups with LSU is that our teachers do not communicate great. There are some that are really good at it, some that are really bad at it. And knowing that can really change how online program works for you. And it has to work for you. An online program should not make your life harder because you're taking it because it's more consistent for your style. You don't have to go somewhere to do it. So it should work for you. Don't work for it. You have to just figure out what fits you best. And making that list, checking it twice, being full Santa Claus about it, might be the best way of finding what works.
Also, it depends on like what you did in undergrad, but if you go through like FAFSA, you might be actually like eligible for different Pell grants. You might have other grant options. Something else. Check out each and every school and program because they will have something different every single time. So that's a great way to figure out how to pay for everything because you can apply to several different grants or fellowships or scholarships or GA ships to get everything paid for. You just shop around.
It also is just like when dealing with the GA ships, that kind of stuff, remember that that is also secondary to your school. It is another job on top of it. It is great in the sense of like, if that was your full-time like shtick, that's what my roommates do. They're both GAs. So they just go to work, they go to school, it's in the same department, it's great for them, it works, whatever, you get a stipend. I don't have that. So if I was going to be a GA, if my stipend didn't cover everything I needed, or if they needed me to be on campus for a particular time, but that's not an option for me, read the fine print of anything that is offered to you because you don't want to sell your soul. You need that. So read everything you can as much as possible and see if they're being kind, if it's worth your time, and don't be afraid to turn down a GA. Just because someone offers you something doesn't mean that it's yours to take. Sometimes it's just not enough, and that's fine.
I 100% agree with that because like I was supposed to go be a GA, but sometimes money isn't enough and you actually have to take the initiative of what is best for you. Even though you want to go in person, you want to have this full-time program, that's great. But also think about it on your financial terms because that plays an important role in everything. And also, like she said, read your fine print. Do not sell your
Stayed extra, didn't the cottage.
I'll recommend two things. Number one, start prepping now in terms of start putting together a list at least by that summer before you start applying. And one of those things is going to be a writing sample. So if you can start thinking about what you want to use as a writing sample, because a number of schools will require you to do for a master's or PhD program, some type of writing sample. So if you've got something, ask a professor if that's going to be a good writing sample. If you don't, start thinking about how you can use maybe one of your course papers as a writing sample. And I'll note too, if you put your email address onto the chat, I will send you, I came up with a list last year for graduate programs in state and out of state, specifically for history. And I'm happy to share that with you or with anybody else. So that way you can start taking a look. And it has a list of due dates. It has a list of what's required for that, GRE, if there was a writing sample that's required for it, how many letters of recommendation. And since I am an Excel person too, I like making lists. I did that format, so I'm happy to share that with you if you want to send your email address.
It also has museum, like it has museums and public history and library science. On there as well. So it's a master list that we've been working with.
Oh, if you do want to end up going work in a museum, actually showing your face there, a lot of the times, like Dr. Cox said, is very important because like I worked at the World War II Museum, but I haven't been there in a while. But I know I could go up and like some people will be like, oh, I know you, like I still remember you. Works the same for libraries. Yeah.
Show that you actually care about it, and then they'll care a little bit more about you. Go to programs. Also, if you, sorry, I'm not gonna go on a very mini spiel about libraries. If you don't know the area you go to, if you move for your grad program, if you move at any point and you don't feel like you have a lot of people, libraries are safe places that have programs that are for different age groups, and you can meet people that way, but it's also a great way for them to know your face if you apply to work there. Highly recommend, please get a library card, anyway.
Okay, so I am in my second semester of my freshman year. And I'm currently a history major. However, I'm so absolutely confused on what I want to do. Because I came here knowing what I wanted to do, and of course, I don't know if you guys have ever had the parent talk where it's like, are you really gonna make money? Are you gonna do this?
Are you sure you want to do that?
I have that talk every time I go home. Which stresses me out recently. And so coming here, I had two options. First was like going into education, but now I'm kind of like, I don't know if I really want to, because it's just not. I think I would be happy doing it, it's just not on the top of my list.
It's not something that would completely fulfill you.
No.
And in order to be a successful teacher, like that's gotta be something that you live, breathe, want to eat, like you want
Like
to do
you
it every
need-
day.
You
Feel very inspired.
Yeah.
No, like if you do not love it, you will not enjoy it.
And like you need to be able to look at the baddest kid in your school and say, I still love you, even though you're the baddest kid. Yesterday was my first day teaching. My first day. I had 3 kids expelled in one day. 3 of my students were expelled in one day.
Not
And I went-
specifically by Nancy.
Not they were all
walked in and
expelled
she just
in between classes. They just happened to be all leaving my class when it happened. Weird. Anyway, you have to be able to like look at those kids who just went to OSS and say, I still love you. And like want to go back the next day. That kid who has sat there and talked and talked and talked and would not just shut up all day long. You have to say, I'm really looking forward to seeing that kid tomorrow. Cause like there are 2 kids who literally will not quit talking during my first hour class. And to be honest, I think they're my favorites.
Okay, like also like in education, like you will have your people that you're like always your go-to. And that will brighten your day as much as you can, but again, sometimes the bad kids take over and like you're just like.
As a non-teacher, I wanna throw in something. Every job will have a bad day.
Yeah,
I work at a library, there are people who get banned, I have had stuff that is not great happen while I'm present. You will have bad days at jobs, however. I don't want you to be scared if this is in your life's blood, I need you to know. Do you still like the high school you went to? Do you still talk to any of those teachers? Have you been back? Ask to see if you can volunteer for a day.
Yeah.
Go in there, separate from yourself as a student. Go as a teacher, where you're going to assist the teacher in doing her task. If they let you go back, try that. If it's not for you, that's fine.
So, like I said, that wasn't my original goal.
Yeah.
So when I came here, my whole goal was I wanted to be a historian and keep it that way. I still have that idea in mind. It's just now, after giving the whole parent talk over and over and over again, it's gotten to the point where I just don't know what to do.
Can I level you?
If I may,
No,
because I double majored in history, so I came here, I have a bachelor's in history with a minor in psychology. I also have a bachelor's in petroleum services and the associate in safety technology. I had the same talk. My mom was like, I'm worried because I know history doesn't pay. So my bright idea was Louisiana, oil fields, that's gonna pay something. And with history here, because I don't know if it's still this way, you're kind of forced to have like a minor. Having another major ruffled in is doable because you have all that open space that is dedicated for a minor. So if you find something else that you like, the history program is like designed for that. So don't think, oh, you have to go education. You can go somewhere else and just throw it in.
Because I'll just go this now, I'm kind of still second year person, but I've heard some people say if you're not in charge of the place, then unfortunately the classroom's gonna run you.
Yeah, that is true though.
Yeah.
Because if the classroom runs you, then you're screwed.
To fully level. I in high school wanted to be a chemistry major. I wanted to be a forensic scientist. My grandma heard that and she was like, I'm so excited for you. I'm so excited for you. I got to college and I switched my major immediately. My grandma asked me every week that I would go home to her if I was switching my major back to chemistry. Between me and you, your parents don't matter. It is your life. If you want to be a historian, if that makes you happy, if going into that position, imagining your life that way is what makes you the happiest person, that is what you should do. Because half of everything we're talking about here is just tips and tricks on how to make money to survive the day. But in reality, none of us would be up here. None of us would be having this job if we didn't have the determination to get one. There's a part of it, it's like, yeah, there will be days where you feel like you have no options. But if you are content with having that, okay, well, maybe I'll pick up this job while I'm aiming to get this job. That's fine. I worked at Nicholls the craft store until I got a job at a library. There will be moments where you don't have that job and that degree that you hope for. But putting in the effort is half of the fight. Even if I got the degree in chemistry, if I wasn't happy with my degree, if I didn't want to be a chemist, it doesn't matter how great of a degree I got. I would not get a job as a chemistry person. A chemist, I literally just said it. I would not get a job as a chemist. However, I left this school, not sure of what I wanted to do, but I was pulled a direction and I walked in it. We didn't have a panel when we were here. So we kind of guessed.
We talked to our friends.
We talked to our teachers.
And pray.
And prayed.
You probably did.
You have to understand, if you're okay with what you want to do, everything else doesn't matter.
Ultimately, it's your life.
Yeah.
This whole panel, different options for the degree that your parents are saying you can't get a job. We all had jobs that
Make
paid.
sure you're happy and make sure that, just understand history is not some kind of your quick scheme. But if you're happy and it's worth it to you, go for it. Because at the end of the day, your happiness is what matters, and don't go be a physical therapist or something. God knows it. It's not what you actually want, trying to be happy for somebody else.
Another thing that you could do, because I want to say I heard this on your obedient and humble servant. One thing, so there's a podcast that we really enjoy, it's a women's history podcast, and they read letters from historical women. And they're all just transcribed, and there are it's maybe you want to look at the different avenues you can do with a history degree. One thing you can see is some of these museums just don't have enough people who want to sit there and transcribe old letters, so they'll take a digital copy of it, they'll just photocopy it and they'll send it to you, and you can sit there and transcribe letters from home.
Great on your CV.
Yeah.
It looks great on your CV.
Absolutely.
So, if that's, say you're thinking, maybe I do want to go be an archivist and work in an archive as a historian for an archive. Well, that's something that an archivist is going to do, is they're going to have to look through letters, see what's important, and be able to transcribe those letters. You can do that from home, and I think you even get paid a couple of bucks for doing it. Or you can just volunteer, and that's for places that hold the Martha Washington papers, the Jefferson papers. You can, they're transcribing so many historical figures papers, and that's literally something they can take a photocopy of, a scan of, send you like a file of maybe 25 of them and say, hey, can you have these back to me in, you know, a couple weeks? A transcribed, you know, just put this if you can't understand the word or, you know, whatever. And they'll send it back, so at least you've done half of that work. And that's something you can put on a resume, when you go to, if you want to do a master's program, that's something you can put on your resume. I transcribed 25 of Jefferson Davis's papers for ABC Museum. You know, it's something you can always do too.
Have you taken public history yet? Take it.
Like,
Yeah.
what is it that you would like to do? What are you thinking?
That's such a hard question.
You don't have to have an answer.
You don't have to have an answer, but if you had an idea, it was
Is
just.
there anything that we've talked about that's cool to you? Sounds cool?
Is there an area of history that you just like, oh my gosh, extra dead people or extra dead people?
I love that.
That's people that
Extra dead, meaning dead, or freshly dead.
I'm gonna go with no for both of them.
That's okay.
Only because, so before I came to college, history was just, I don't wanna say a hobby, but.
A hobby, it's a hobby.
Like amongst like historical sites, like especially like history and things like that, and just, I loved learning about different people and like what they did. And so I went out and like, it was just a hobby at that point of just learning. Originally, being the kid that I was, I wanted to go work for Disney. That was just something that was on my mind constantly.
Disney needs his.
You can feeding.
That was.
You can end the this. I remember feeding.
Yeah.
The end goal was supposed to be, I wanted to be a historian at Disney because I heard rumors of them opening their archives that they have currently in California into Portland. But I don't really think I would want to do that anymore. Just, I've lost some passion for some of the things that I came into college wanting to do. So I kind of came here because my mom was like, hey, they're having this, and I said, no, text, like, go, it's probably a good thing for you. And because I've been thinking about changing my major, just either staying in history or going into something else, and I just don't know what to do. Because right now I'm kind of in that zone of, I don't have a singular big long-term goal. Because I just never.
Do you know if you've moved out of university? Now I'm gonna, okay. So I was an administrative coordinator for the history department for a while. So now it's up until 2 days ago. So we're gonna flip back there. Do you know if you've moved out of university college yet?
No, she shouldn't have.
You haven't.
First year.
Okay, so you haven't completed your first 30 hours yet? Okay. Perfect. When you do that, so the end of, you should be completing 30 hours this semester. Okay, so at the end of this semester, right before everything flips to summer, I want you to make an appointment with someone in the history department to have your advisor changed. Because the people in the history department are going to be able to nurture you a lot better than anyone in the advising center ever imaginably could be. And Cambria is amazing, but she's not going to be able to nurture you the way that these guys do. Or Mr. Wells or Miss Lori.
They know you, and they know, like, they know what my interests were. Like, I can go to Dr. Wilson's office, Mr. Wells' office, and be like, hey, I'm doing this, and he would be like, okay, so these are the classes that you should probably take.
Right, and they can, especially these two, there's another long thing. These, especially these two and Mr. Wells are very good at sitting down with you, not necessarily to talk about what classes you should take, but to really just weed out your brain and kind of really see, you know, get down to the depths of what, you know, you're really kind of seeking. And giving you ideas and options and really trying to help you in a way that's gonna be helpful instead of gonna be life helpful instead of college helpful. They're really good at that.
Jared Wells was my advisor. We still have a Zoom call once a week.
Yeah.
Because life continues to happen and sometimes you want a life coach.
He's great advice.
But literally when I was in my undergrad, Paul Wilson introduced me to him because I said that I wanted to go into public history. And he was the person in charge of public history at the time. So I was passed off to Jared Wells and the first thing he did was, okay, well, what kind of history do you like? And I go, I don't know. I like people. I like talking about people. And I go, well, I like talking about queer history. Sure. That's like a thing that I enjoy talking about. And he's like, okay, so you want to do early? I'm like, well, I also like early American history, like the founding of the country, because I'm fascinated by how that impacts us to this day is like the setup of the community. And he's like, okay, that's fine. How do you feel about this topic or this topic? And I was like, well, I really don't like talking about war from the aspect of war. I like talking about like people's reactions to war, like the home front or
Humanity stuff.
and he was like, okay, so you like the he had like an actual type where I was like interested in this kind of history that I didn't know was
You're a
officially.
social historian
I'm a
Yeah.
social historian
and a cultural historian.
and a cultural history. I didn't know those were options. I thought that I had to pick a time, a place, a thing. No, you can just talk about people. If you love people, you can talk about that. And particularly based on kind of what we're talking about, where you like seeing how people interact with stuff, you might like historiographies, which is the most embarrassing thing to say out loud, where you just like how people talk about history.
Yeah.
Where you can look at how history changes based on people interacting with it. And that's also something that people don't really talk about in undergrad is historiographies, but you accidentally do it while working in your history undergrads anyway, because you're talking about people talking about history and how they interact with it changes over time. It's like, even now, like if you look at people 20 years ago, explaining the same historical topic, they have a different way of doing it. They have different opinions on it and how that matters. So don't think of history as linear as some people outside of the history community might think of it. And it's okay if this isn't your answer. You heard all of us explain different degrees that weren't for us. You can love history but not want to be historical. However, don't let anyone else talk you out of it because you're the one that has to do the job.
That's the main thing. I've had the exact same talk that you've had multiple times. And I've had the I told you so talks many a times.
The
But-
public history class might be useful too.
The public history class may be useful, but you could probably talk to one of your professors to get into it early because it is a senior level class. I did that whenever I was a sophomore.
There's still a baby. Is there not the baby public history class anymore? That's like 3 something. So that's not a senior level class.
So we've got intro, I'm teaching museum studies next semester.
Oh.
We've got
Well, I'm thinking
That's a great class.
preservation.
I'm thinking of intro because when Jared Wells ran it, we had that baby internship that was also involved in that.
Oh, we had two different site internships. One's a 3-hour, one's a 6-hour.
Okay, but those are like the tall, that's like the senior level, but for intro, do you still have them go out to do an internship? Sorry, this is actually just a question that I got.
They do a service learning component.
Yeah, service learning, that can be your first step, because you will have to go to a place and start working with history directly. And as a person who loves that part of history and is roommates with someone who does not love that part of history. Me and Sam had 2 very different feelings about our service learning part. I went and took an internship afterwards. Sam has decided and knows now that she's very tied to the academic path line. So the best thing I can say is if you're not sure, trying out some of these options can make you sure.
And also too, so I won't volunteer Dr. Cox's time, but I will. Speak, before you even choose an advisor, feel free, come meet with me, come meet with Dr. Cox. We're happy to like help you kind of figure out what exactly it is that you might be interested in. And then what you can do next, you know, even as an individual one-on-one thing, because we're happy to be resources for you, even if we're not your advisor. We're happy to meet with you or anybody and to talk to you about what you want to do and how you want to get to those steps. And we might be able to provide you more in a kind of more one-on-one individual basis than a kind of this larger setting. But these are, I think, all really great things to think about. But it's nice to have some guidance from somebody who's going to say, okay, I know here's what the steps that you need to take next. And so we are happy to do that. And so please let us know, schedule time to meet with us, and we're happy to meet with you. And that goes the same thing for anybody on Zoom. So Melissa had asked one question. This is, I think, specifically for you, Ryan. A question about doing the archive certificate. About doing it, is there an advantage of doing it now? Could you take an archive certificate now versus taking it during graduate school, or is there an advantage or disadvantage?
For archival certification, at least from what I know, because once again, I don't think I'm going that path, is the only way to get that certification is to do it while you're in grad school, because they're going to be taking classes that lead you to your certification. So there's no real alt cert way. If we're using you guys as kind of like the example form, you kind of just have to go through and really experience it. I wish that I knew more about that, but from what I know, going that path, you can take a lot of the same classes at the beginning part that you would take for any of the other library science degrees in case you're not fully confident in doing an archival certification. And then it's just like a couple more classes at the very end that goes on top of it. And that can also be dual degree with your history master's if you want to do a public history master's and an archival certification. I think that answers that.
All right. Any other questions either from people on Zoom or people in person?
No, but I'll just say that one last piece of advice I would go is like, as long as you're happy and as long as you don't look like the ones who go work in a fast food restaurant, because most of the time you go in there, most of them are like, I'm just here. I'm just here getting paid my $7.15 an hour. Here's my money. Person who's in charge says I don't care. That's why I turn them up. As long as you don't look like them, at least then okay, you're doing. Hey, I'm doing fine.
And Melissa, you had asked about the difference between public history and archive certificates. So, Ryan can speak to this too, but one of the big differences, archive certificates in particular, they're going to gear you up specifically for a job in an archive or doing archival work. This could also be corporate work.
Yes.
So some states will have you could work for a public institution. Some places also, corporations will have archives that they keep, and you could get a job working there. And in that case, you're specifically gearing up to work in the archival field versus public history. Public history is going to be much more generalized ones. This is if you kind of want to work in museums, but there is also museum studies degrees as well. So if you want to work in a museum, if you want to be a curator, getting a museum studies degree is also a good one to consider too. Public history is going to make you much more of a generalist. And then when you take public history certifications or public history programs, you usually kind of figure out what type of public historian you want to be. But it's more kind of a generalist. Archive, museum studies are going to be much more specific to that. And I don't want to add anything to that.
Archival, the most basic way of explaining it is archives is the preservation, maintenance, and creation of records. And records can be like paper-wise, like notes and stuff like that, or it can also be physical object, but it's the preservation, maintenance, and creation of. For public history, it is the direct discussion of a site's history. So that can be the discussion or preservation of downtown here. They have people who are going site to site, taking pictures of different areas. That's public history. However, if those pictures were printed out and stored in an archive, the person that would be handling those and making sure that they are safe and organized and maintained or put into a digital sphere, that would probably be an archivist at the top of it. Public historians can work beneath that archivist, but the head archivist usually has an archival certification to make sure they fully understand maintenance of an archive.
Thank you so much, Ryan.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, unless there's any other last questions, I think we will probably call it a break there. We're already way over our time. So thank you to the panelists for participating. Thank you for coming via either in person or on Zoom and asking any questions. Like I said, I will send out, and if anybody wants specifically that list of history programs or history related master's programs, please feel free to put I've got Melissa, I've got your email address. If anybody else wants that, I'm happy to get that from you. Please feel free to reach out, contact us, and let us know if you have any other questions. Thanks again.